Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Westman, and this is the Keto Made Simple podcast. Today I'm going to be answering questions being sent to me live. Let's begin.
Is there a way to access the clinical studies? I've had pushback from people saying there are no clinical studies about low-carb diets, and there are oodles. Oodles is a scientific term. There's something called a meta-analysis, which is a study of studies. So it's a summary of studies. And there are now 4 or 5 meta-analyses about low-carb diets in terms of obesity treatment. Even now, diabetes, the largest clinical trial is one that was done in Silicon Valley by Virta Health, showing that you could reverse type 2 diabetes. And most of the people who are on insulin were able to reduce or come off their insulin during that study. Of course, the Virta Health model of delivering the food list and the implementation is very high tech. They require you to have a keto monitor and a Bluetooth scale that sends the information to the company, and it's not cheap. But they did a study that is brilliant. It's the best diabetes study so far because it's a large number of people and because they knew people were in ketosis, because people were measuring their blood ketones with one of the Keto Mojo monitors. Our study on diabetes, which was published in 2008, was not so large, and we didn't require people to measure ketones in the blood. So the largest, I'm told there's a Reddit group that has all of these studies available, and I learned about it on Reddit, but it's actually a Zotero list. If you don't know Zotero, Zotero, it's a bibliography database where you can put your studies in there. Of course, it's going to be the high-level summary, the abstract, and the title and the journal. But someone else has already made a database that you can search full of this information. I don't remember how to get into their Zotero. It's a public list of studies. If any of you are able to do that, please teach us all how to do it. I just know of it. The other places to look for the clinical trials, dietdoctor.com has a list. The Public Health Collaboration of the UK, so phcuk.com, has a file you can download that has a list of all the studies, and it actually has it in an infographic. And so that, for me, in my presentations, I'll use the Public Health Collaboration of the UK summary to show the clinical trials, but they also have the list of all of the studies. So, but remember, Anne, it's not, is it your job to teach other people? More and more, I'm learning that science only goes far to teach people who are resistant about science, right? I thought that, anyway, if people have fixed beliefs, and some doctors do, it's hard to teach them and get them out of that fixed belief. But that's great that you're wanting to share the information and teach people. This really is a grassroots movement because the powers that be at the top have entrenchment based on belief systems, the money flow, and the idea that medical care today really is medication care, and that I'm wondering, and you're our group of high-level users and influencers, and actually I want your feedback on what to do live. Learn with Dr. Westman events or videos. I don't know if you've noticed, but at Adapt Your Life, I put out free information, the Adapt Your Life YouTube channel, and I've changed the format to have this blue wall and right talking to the camera. I used to be interviewed by Glenn, and now I'm just doing 8-minute, snippets of information right to the camera. And so let me know if you have ideas that topics you'd like me to do. Of course, these are going to be general public domains, so that I'm not going to be using the same language that I'll use with you because you've come through the class and understand things at a higher level. But what got me onto that is that I think I'll be doing one soon, and maybe even address at a different venue, maybe a meeting or maybe a TED Talk at some point on how the medication care today, medical care has become medication care. And I don't really like using medications anymore. If I can do something using, my secret weapon, the diet, food, I don't need to use medications. In fact, we get to de-prescribe people, take them off the medications. Anyway, let me know what you think about that concept of medical care today as medication care. Although now thinking of TED Talks, I know I'm kind of rambling, but as you get the questions in your mind, let's see. Stephanie asks, what are some of the great fatty acid foods we can incorporate? Well, so fatty acids, thanks, Stephanie. Fatty acids are just the molecules that are in fat. So any food that has fat will have fatty acids. So, I learned over the last couple of years that there's a particular brand of beef brisket that's made in the southern U.S., and it's so moist and fatty that, so you'll know fat, it's grease, basically. Yeah, grease is good now. So, and even today, I was in my clinic seeing people at Duke, this person who, let's say recently someone came to me and had the old mindset that grease in the food was bad. Grease was fattening. And I said, no, that's not the case. It's carbs that are the fattening foods. And so any food with fat would give you the fatty acids, and it's what you prefer. If you have been doing a low-fat diet for years and you don't even like the idea of eating the moist, fatty brisket, then you don't have to. That's what's great about this is if you just keep the carbs super low, you're going to be burning your body fat and generating ketones, so you don't have to eat those fatty foods. However, over time, generally you'll be able to generate those enzymes and digestive juices to be able to tolerate and even enjoy and maybe crave steaks and ribeyes and things like that. One of the keto events that happened recently was Keto Salt Lake, and Amy Berger and I were there. And what maybe remind me of that is that they had a Q&A about what's your favorite cut of steak, meat, and the fellow who was from Central America mentioned a cut of meat that I'd never heard of. But anyway, so red meat is a great way to get fatty foods, but any sort of meat will bring some fat, even though it looks lean. There's going to be some fat in it. So kind of the general principle is eat what you like from the list of foods and eat what you enjoy. But you may be able to get higher fat content foods and tolerate them better over time, even if you can't initially. Remember, I don't like the idea of having you add oils and butter to steak, things like that. That's one of the internet keto things that can get you into trouble because it might give you nausea or diarrhea episodically, and don't want that to happen. Let's see. So I have the clinic at Duke moved from, it's in the same building, but it went from upstairs to downstairs. There's a little larger space, and then the nurses rotate through. So far, haven't been assigned or haven't chosen one particular nurse to be working with. So you'll meet many different types of nurses and nursing approaches. I have to say it's been fascinating because there are half a dozen 6 nurses who are rotating through, and most of them know nothing about low-carb diets or the weight loss process, or which is really an obesity medicine approach, like I do. I do a keto diet version of obesity medicine, and it's just fascinating to see their eyes opening. These are, well-trained nurses in the Duke system, but, like doctors, they know very little about nutrition and about this approach. And that's been fun to see them learn and become very interested in using an approach that helps so many people. Let's see. Hey, Stephanie says, asking about fatty acids and fats. I may have had this mixed up with my salmon fixation. Well, okay. Yeah, so that as a fatty type of fish is fine, yeah. Then Anne said, was it picanha? Yeah, I think it was. And as it was the type of cut of steak from Central America, picanha, I think it was. And that's a common cut in South America, and it's delicious. Yep. I think that's what it was. But excellent. The other person I've seen on TV talking keto in a big way is Dr. Stephen Gundry, which he talks about lots of things, not just keto diets. And I've heard that he lately is saying that the plant-based keto diet is best. And this is not something that I endorse or think that it's true, because there's no data and no science to say that. It's just something that sounds good and probably gets more viewers or more sales. But sales of these keto things and even books has helped bring up the attention and notoriety of a low-carb keto diet, which I think is fantastic. There's been no time when it's been so much in the media or even at bookstores, that sort of thing. You might even remember back in the day, I remember going to the bookstore in 1998 when I was trying to figure out, should I study this approach? And most of the books were low-fat books. I even remember there was a DASH diet book, and that I don't know anyone who uses a DASH diet. It's not prescription strength, but it has been studied a lot by the governmental researchers. But so that there's been a big shift in the books at the bookstore to be more keto friendly and keto relevant, and I think that's just because it's more effective. Let's see. Oh, there was a question about coffee that I missed. Coffee. Why is there so much talk? I was seeing coffee having a negative effect on triglycerides. Please say it isn't true. Yeah. So I think coffee's fine. So again, show me a study, and my position in the keto world is sort of like the woman in that commercial years ago for Burger King. Where's the beef? Of course, that's going to date you and me a little bit, but where's the beef? Where's the study? So you can find a study that might have one person or two people, or there might be a small change. I think there's an attempt today for internet keto for people to come up with a nuance, or if it happens to one person, therefore it should apply to everyone. And so some people may be sensitive to caffeine, and even in terms of hunger or blood glucose or blood triglycerides, but it's not the majority of people. But again, if you're coming at it from, I'm dealing with this group who are my people, and one person has an issue with it, often that group is going to gravitate in that way. The hazard of that is that I saw this happen at a meeting. If one person can't have it, and then another person can't have that other thing, and that person can't have another, then you end up not being able to eat or drink anything, which is absurd, which is ridiculous. That's the extreme that happened in terms of a food causing inflammation. and a doctor got up at a meeting and said, this food causes inflammation, this food causes inflammation, so therefore I don't eat. I mean, that was basically the implication, is that he fasted all the time because he was afraid of eating a food that caused inflammation. Well, the ridiculous part of that is you die if you don't eat. I mean, you have to have some inflammation, and you could choose foods that are lower in creating inflammation. But so I'm not worried about caffeine. Now, that is kind of how should I say, an advanced technique. You've been doing this for a while. You're at 20 total grams, not net. You're not habit eating, meaning you're in the old mindset that you have to eat 3 meals a day. And again, I in the clinic, I saw it again. There was someone who had weight loss surgery. So stomach is made this big. They reroute the intestines. This person thought that you had to have breakfast. So that when I said you don't have to have breakfast, the response was, well, everyone else says I do. And it was a relief for this person to not have to, didn't like breakfast, didn't like breakfast foods, wasn't hungry. But so these mindset things that, you think you need, everyone has taught you this, that can take time to unlearn. Anyway, what you put in the coffee, that's different. So there's coffee, and then there's what you put in the coffee. Well, if you're putting in lots of cream, that can raise the triglyceride level. In fact, that's why you fast before you have a lipid panel. You go in fasting because the cream can raise the triglycerides. And of course, no sugar in the coffee, please. Although I suppose you could have a very, very small amount. And I know I didn't say that. Use some non-sugar sweetener if you need that. Remember, I've been doing this about 20 years, and over time, it took me 10 years to give up jelly beans on Easter. Finally, I was in, a place where there weren't jelly beans, and that finally, so this year I'm like 10 years jelly bean free on Easter, and you'll see in the membership or in public, I don't like to talk about myself. I know there's this tension where you have influencers who talk about themselves, and they have, millions of followers. This isn't about me. You remember, I'm a teacher, a doctor, a researcher, teaching lots of other doctors too, but also patients, and helping you to understand how your body works. But yes, I am a carb addict, sugar addict, like, most Americans who grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, when sugar was, all around, having Halloween candy, mounds of that, and bartering with my brothers for the bit of honey that, I could still kind of see and taste today, subconsciously. So anyway, just you want to be careful to realize that a very small amount of an addictive substance can kindle that desire to have, and it's not just sugar, it's starches as well. The savory side can be just as addictive. The bread, the pasta, the rice, the fruit. It doesn't have to be candy, that sort of thing. So anyway, I'm not worried about coffee or caffeine. Now, if you are at wit's end, you're in it a year, you want to try a 2-week challenge of no coffee, do it. The way to individually know your own body results is to take a challenge, 2 weeks, whatever you're trying to accomplish. If it's weight loss, if it's diabetes reversal, you can see it for yourself if tweaking the diet can help. So some people will take a 2-week challenge off artificial or non-sugar sweeteners. I say non-sugar because stevia is a non-sugar sweetener, but it's not artificial. So and there are these interesting sugar alcohol molecules that some are naturally available. So anyway, that's why I use non-sugar sweeteners. For example, my friend Christy Sullivan, who lives down the street here in North Carolina in Pinehurst, has her franchise of cooking keto with Christy books and people, and she teaches it. She's great if you like that style of cooking and her approach. She has a membership viewership, and she had recently a challenge for people to go 2 weeks without, and she calls them artificial sweeteners. So she and I are in discussion, and she knows that I say, well, it's very useful to have non-sugar sweeteners early on because I can get people off sugar. In fact, if I didn't have non-sugar sweeteners, people would probably gravitate back to sugar. So she texts me during this challenge that so-and-so said she was at a standstill. Thank you so much for this challenge of 2 weeks off the non-sugar sweeteners, because it got her off a plateau or a stall. And so she sends me a text of the Facebook post of somebody. And, I'd say there were 3 people who she, at least of the people in the challenge, that she forwarded that information to me. So therefore, in the ADAPT meetings, this is a way for me to get information from 500 people over Saturdays in 3 different places, but you add it up, it's 500 people. So I asked, how many of you are doing a keto diet or low-carb diet? And pretty much all the hands go up. There are a few people who are dragged there by their friends and relative. But so I asked, how many of you had trouble with nuts, controlling nuts? And I would say half the hands go up. So if you can imagine the room, 50% of people are raising their hands with nuts being a problem. And then in the same kind of survey session, I asked how many of you had trouble with artificial or non-sugar sweeteners. And I'd say maybe 5 per meeting. So that's going to be, so maybe 10 or 15 people total out of 500 had a problem with artificial sweeteners. And I'm assuming they understood the question and all that. So it's much less common than, say, for example, the problem a lot of people have with nuts. And that's why I say you may want to try a challenge of no coffee or no non-sugar sweeteners on your own if you think that might be an issue. And of course, keeping the carbs super low, the 20 gram, even maybe measuring ketosis is something to do to troubleshoot if you're really struggling to have it work. Because in my view of what people do, they'll target these things like, maltodextrin and the shredded cheese, which is a trivial amount of carbs, and they'll think that's the problem when actually they're having 4 or 5 ounces of cream in their coffee throughout the day, or having bulletproof coffee or things like that. So remember, I'm trying to focus on the largest issues first, and then you can do these challenges about caffeine or artificial sweeteners. Anyway, and so Christy, just to tie off that, she's sending me, see, artificial sweeteners matter, and I'm explaining, well, it's probably not as big a issue as you think, but she's trying to handle her own members and be responsive to their needs. But that it also kind of becomes the political knee-jerk response. If politics or policy change often reacts, well, that happened, you have to make some change. No, I don't think so. I think I still want to focus on the most important, the big picture view, keeping it simple and as easy as possible for you. Again, that's just my place in the keto world, making sure there's some science behind it, but your body is your own body, and you can do these types of challenges to figure things out too. Okay, let's see. Back to some questions. let's see, Bird, hey Bird, says, I bought the DASH diet book many moons ago. Yeah, it was a nice hardcover to donate to my local thrift shop. Well, yeah, it probably didn't help the other person who picked it up either. It's just not powerful enough for a doctor to use. It's the darling diet of the universities, because all the universities were involved in the DASH diet studies, but it doesn't work very well. So I'm sorry, some of the times I can't see your name, so I'm sorry if I don't call out your name. That's an issue. You have to allow StreamYard the permission to give StreamYard permission to use your name. But anyway, so Facebook user asks, can being on a diuretic long-term cause hypercalcemia? Absolutely, yes. Yeah. So look up side effects of a diuretic, whatever the one you're on, and hypercalcemia. You can put those in the same Google search term, and you're going to find that it is an issue. Diuretics can cause not only hypercalcemia, they can cause hyperglycemia, meaning elevated blood glucose as well. A little known side effect of the diuretics is you can elevate blood glucose. It contributes to diabetes. Same with the statin medicines. It can cause an elevation in blood glucose. So I don't stick up for medicines anymore. Again, that sort of, there's a pill for every ill, and medical care today is medication care. I even see doctors prescribing medicines to treat the side effects of medicines, instead of looking at the root cause of diet, which can do so much. Let's see. Edith asks, hey, Edith, is it common, or is there a reason that the BUN might be elevated when doing keto? BUN, yes, in fact. So the BUN is called the blood urea nitrogen, and it's on a simple chemistry test that your doctor will probably do every year. The BUN, blood urea nitrogen, and creatinine are two of the blood tests in the chemistry panel that gives you an indication of the kidney function. So creatinine is the better indicator about kidney function. So if that's in the normal range, creatinine, and I say normal range because if you're in metric or US units, it's going to be a different number. So just look at the normal range. Creatinine is the best indicator. BUN can be elevated because of either a relatively low blood volume, and I think that's what happens on a low-carb diet for some people. You have a mild diuretic effect of not eating the carbs because insulin goes down and you let go of water and salt more freely. So, pick up on the water and salt if you have the elevated BUN, or just acknowledge or understand that it is, as long as the creatinine is normal, don't worry about a very mild elevation of BUN. I suppose that just to be compulsive and complete in teaching, that the BUN can also be a little bit elevated compared to normal. Remember, normal range really means carb eating range. The normal range is from carb eaters. And you have to understand that for looking at cholesterol or looking at ketone measurements. So the BUN can be elevated if you have a little higher amount of protein in the diet. And so it's not a bad sign of kidney function being a problem. It may be that your blood volume is a little lower, or that you're having a little more protein in the diet. And the final thing, if it was recurrent and you feel sick, and it can actually be a sign of absorbing protein, including blood in the bowels. So that I just say for completeness, if you're feeling well, that's a trivial or a very unlikely scenario. But if you're not feeling well, you feel like you see a doctor and your BUN elevated, that's something the doctor might think about. So I don't worry about it if it's just a couple points above the normal range. Let's see. Yeah, so speaking of blood tests, Dave Feldman, who runs Cholesterol Code. You've probably heard me talk about it and about Dave. And there's a interview I did with Dave in the hub. You can go back and watch all of these videos of guests that we've had on. Dave started a company where you can get your own lab tests. It's called Own Your Labs. And what's fascinating is a couple thousand people have signed up already to get their labs. What happens is you contract with them, pay them the money, they give you a ticket to go to a LabCorp, a blood drawing area near your home. And then what happens is they allow you to have access to your lab tests, and then you can opt in to allow them to use your tests, but without your name, of course. And they're going to be creating basically the new normal range of people who don't eat carbohydrates. So this is one of those things that I bet we'll see, that the new normal range of people who don't eat carbs is going to include a little higher BUN level. So what will be fascinating is you'll get a lab test from LabCorp from comparing your labs to people who eat carbs. That's everyone else who submitted their blood. But you'll get your lab test from your own labs from Dave Feldman's company, and you'll be in the normal range. Because what's happening is you're comparing yourself to other people who don't eat carbs. So I've wanted to see that sort of distribution, meaning the range of people, normal range of people who don't eat carbs, not only for BUN, but for cholesterol levels. I get so many questions about cholesterol levels. So consider going to ownyourlabs.com. Let me just make sure that's the right. Ownyourlabs.com. It's Dave Feldman and Siobhan Huggins. You might know them. Yeah, so ownyourlabs.com. Get your blood work privately. You can opt in to have your blood be used for scientific comparisons. And a portion of the proceeds of the sale of doing these lab tests goes to the Citizen Science Foundation, which is Dave's nonprofit that is funding the clinical trial on CT scans, the CT angiogram of people who have super high LDL levels. Anyway, and you can watch Dave's interview where we talk about his background in computer science. And because he had a high LDL cholesterol, he started inquiring about it, created a Facebook group, and now has a clinical trial going on, self-funded, using the Citizen Science Foundation.org, GoFundMe, or similar platform to actually get the internal I want to say lumina, but it's actually the inside look of the arteries. When you think about it, the coronary arteries can be as small as the tip of this pen. And yet this CAT scan that people go to get can show you the inside of that artery with that resolution. This is not the coronary artery calcium score you've heard me talk about. It's the actual CT angiogram. If you have a high LDL level, you might qualify to get this trip to LA to be in the study. What they do is they fly you out there, so everyone has the same testing machine done, and then you have to have been on a keto diet for a year or more, and then you have to agree to measure ketones and be on a keto diet for this next year. And what they'll do is have you fly back to LA, get in the scanner, and see if there's any change in the arteries, coronary arteries, if you have this super high LDL level. So I know if you've heard me talk about, not to worry, we don't know that cholesterol level has the same meaning or is a problem. And now we're actually, or Dave is, Keto World is now doing a study to actually see if a high LDL level in people who don't eat carbs is a problem. So it's a fascinating study. it may actually, if it comes out and that people don't have any atherosclerosis progression with this super high LDL over a period of years, it may call into question the entire whole cholesterol LDL story, which I know if you've been listening to people like Professor Timothy Noakes or David Diamond, Professor Diamond, they've kind of thrown out that whole cholesterol story in their minds and have some great presentations to support that. But this is actually a study that will collect new data to help answer the question of that elevated LDL level. So I guess to summarize that, you could go to ownyourlabs.com. I even kind of wondered if maybe we should work with Dave to get a panel or a reduced price. I wonder if that would be of interest to you. Let us know. Again, it's most doctors won't check insulin levels, for example. So we could have a package where you get an insulin level as part of the package, and you don't have to twist anyone's arm and all that, but you do have to pay for the test. So the downside is it's not the doctor paying for the test, you do, but it's when I talk to them, it's pretty reasonable. Most of these things are all told under $100. So anyway, if it would be really interesting to, you put in what you're eating in kind of big picture view, and then you have the labs, and then you get access to that lab. You can pull it up in your doctor's office, show it to them, so you don't have to have duplicate labs for every doctor. Have you noticed that? I mean, that's kind of annoying that I try not to duplicate labs that I don't have to. Anyway, that's I guess going on that idea of that elevated BUN, not to worry. Well, let's see. Alexis says, please advise about the cruise. Well, the low-carb cruise, I think, is in its 12th year, I think. Didn't have one last year. The low-carb cruise is just basically it's a subset of people on the cruise ship. Not everyone's doing a low-carb diet on this boat. So in the past, it's been, say, 150 people on a boat of 4,000 people. But if you've never been on a cruise, you can actually eat very well in terms of a low-carb diet by just choosing. It's typically a buffet style food choice. And back in the day, the Atkins clinic used to have cruises, and the average weight loss was 8 pounds for the week because they actually supported people. And I think they had up to 600 people on one of those cruises. This is very different. You eat on your own. Well, actually, they do put you in an area in the restaurant together so that you do kind of are under or you're observed. You can see what other people are eating, and so you can learn how to go through a menu and choose the things that are low carb. And the days you're at sea, there are actually speakers in the conference room on the boat. You may not, if you've been on a cruise, you might not have known that there's actually a conference room or two on these boats, and that some people go there and have meetings when you're otherwise you're not at a port doing excursions. So the low carb cruise is on the cruise line called the Royal Caribbean. So it's I'd say it's the kind of a middle range cruise line. It's not the least expensive. It's not the most expensive. It's just fun, so that you're mixing some education, a lot of networking with other people, and so I've come to know people from around the world, basically from the low carb cruise, and kind of like going to camp as a child. You see you next year, and so you develop friendships with folks. At least I've been able to do that, and many other people have too. So it's not everyone; it's not the whole boat. So there are pastries and danishes and desserts there, and you hopefully been doing low carb long enough that they're not going to tug at you, or you occasionally have something. So anyway, that's the low carb cruise. So Edith, what if the creatinine is also slightly elevated? Well, so that again is going to be something to talk about with your doctor, that how elevated matters, and then how long a period of time has it been stable. And that's it's a judgment call. What I would do is pull up all of your creatinine and BUN levels, as long as, we have them. And in some cases, in my computer system, I can see people's blood tests for the last 10 years or even longer if they've been at Duke or in the Epic computer system. Now the computer shares the labs really well with other health systems if they use the same computer. So that's something that you really have to talk to your doctor about it. And it's the number of the creatinine, and also whether it's changing over time, that matters. Let's see. A discount on lab tests. Yeah, well, yeah. So Ann says, Own Your Labs is not available in New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island. Thank you for that. And love to contribute to studies. Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah. Pre-pandemic, we actually were doing local support groups, and we're just starting our local support groups in Durham, face-to-face, next week. The first is next week, the first May Tuesday of the month. I'm kind of discombobulated. So next Tuesday, May 3rd, is going to be our first face-to-face low-carb support group in Durham, North Carolina, that we've had in a couple of years. We started doing them online. People come who know about low-carb diets or who don't know, and they're curious. And we meet at a local hotel, the Hilton Hotel on Hillsborough Road in Durham, North Carolina. And they actually put on a buffet so that you can get food, and it's keto friendly, and come sit down for the support group. There's a fee for the buffet, but so you can actually come eat, and then we meet for about an hour and a half, depending on the questions. And it got to the point where we had 100, 150 people some nights in our local Durham support group. We have a big spillover into a local town called Roxborough that actually kind of sprouted a support group there. There were so many people doing the low-carb diet. It's called the Person County Low-Carb Support Group, and many of them would come share their successes and trials and tribulations. That's the other thing, we like a membership group like this. It's not just for people to say, here's my great story, and for those who aren't having success to just be quiet. We want to help everyone in the group and share how we're accomplishing things. There are a lot of ways to do this. There's a lot of individual variability, like I was mentioning, those 2-week challenges that you might want to do. But the low carb support group, gosh, we've been doing that maybe 12 years now. We started in a Duke building that we outgrew very quickly. Only about 20 people could be in there, and so we started in a local restaurant, thinking, people will eat and all that. Well, we went to some restaurants where the service wasn't so great, and people would come and they'd complain, why is it taking so long? And even there was this really nice paleo restaurant where the food was really good, and it was a little pricey, but the service was so, they did everything so slow. It was a disaster, because most people who come to the support group want things right now. And so anyway, so trying to please everyone, we ended up actually doing a buffet so that you can just pick your own food up right then, come sit down. And that's been the sort of solution to fix the idea that people don't have to wait for the food to be prepared and all. But for years we were in a local Greek restaurant, which is fabulous. You could get the hero meat, of course, no pita, You could get the lamb shank. I remember one gentleman would come and they always get that big lamb shank, and then the flaming cheese. They go, Oppa! And well, turns out that restaurant called Spartacus got torn down, and now there's a Chick-fil-A in that same spot. So can't go to Spartacus anymore. We had a local person who got us introduced to the Hilton Hotel, which again is a nice thing because if you just wanted to come to town for the support group, stay overnight, you could just stay at the hotel as well. But and then they have different size conference rooms so that if there's a big group, they let us have the bigger one. If it's a small group, it's a smaller one. And they've never charged us a fee for the room because we give them the food business. I'm giving you all that detail because you might want to start your own support group locally, wherever you are. I would encourage you to do it in a place where they could do food. It's always a good draw. And a buffet is a great way to make things quick, although it's not going to be quite as personalized that a restaurant which cooks to order might be. But anyway, the membership, for those of you who are new, you are the change. You're the grassroots movement, and so we're going to share as much as we can about how to help your friends, your relatives, to have success as you have, hopefully, and have continued success over time. Let's see. So we were doing some studies prior to the pandemic, and one of the studies we were doing was there was a shake that claimed to be keto friendly, and so I got the owner of the Keto Mojo company to donate some Keto Mojo blood ketone measurement tools, and we had people drink the shake. We did a baseline ketone and glucose, and then a follow-up. And my thought was that we would vet or test different products so that I would get an idea of what it would actually do in real people, and also people who have diabetes might respond differently. So we had 2 meetings where we did that, and then the pandemic hit, and now that study is basically gone. The study died, and we haven't paid to keep up the institutional review board active. So, but that's something to keep in mind, that we might be able to do some sort of membership group study, if you will. But I don't want to make people do that. But if enough people had, for example, had your own keto monitors, and you all decided to check out an Atkins shake, for example, and I do talk about having protein shakes, low carb shakes, as a way to get chocolate. If or the question about caffeine, if there are enough of us who have a question and we have meters, and we can actually check the blood glucose and ketone response to caffeine, or we could do anylabs.com and get our triglyceride levels checked after see what I mean? So we could actually harness the power of us doing a similar idea. Of course, it has to be within something you want to do, and you have to be very careful to not broadcast the information, and you really can't publish papers unless you have IRB approval. And so it's really not formal research. It's more testing what happens in a bunch of people doing a similar thing. So it's in kind of a gray area that wouldn't be regulated by a research institution, I don't think. That's kind of my hunch, because you can do whatever you want. Stop the caffeine, go get the triglyceride level checked. It has to be fasting, of course. So therefore it's not after caffeine. So I bet it would be novel to have 20 people drinking caffeine, triglyceride level before and after I don't think that study's been done in the context of doing a low carb diet. That would be interesting. So careful what you ask for, Stephanie, making some research opportunities. Available. But, that's my background, trying to figure out how to study things and even how to study things without much research money. I like thinking through that sort of thing. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money to get answers that can be applicable and relevant to lots and lots of people.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and check out adaptyourlifeacademy.com.